Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, I do videos on creepy and disturbing things. And welcome to the Christmas setup. This is the first video that I'm filming that's going to be going out in December, and all December videos are going to have this background. So I hope you guys like it. Let me know what you think. It's currently snowing outside, and so it's honestly a vibe right now. Today we are talking about tier 7 of the Weird Strange Death Iceberg. We are almost done with this iceberg. There's only one more tier after this. We're gonna get right into it, but today's video is partnered, so I'm gonna roll to that and I'll be right back. This video is kindly sponsored by Scentbird. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service. Choose a new designer fragrance every month from top designer brands like Prada, Gucci, and Versace. Take their quiz on their website if you aren't sure what you want, or if you have a perfume that you've had your eye on for a while now, but you don't want to commit to a very pricey full bottle yet, try it through Scentbird first. I love that Scentbird isn't those super tiny sample bottles that you get with like 2 drops of fragrance in it and it's impossible to open without spilling the whole thing all over you anyway. Scentbird vials are different. They're 8 times bigger than a regular sample size, and they come in these beautiful vials that you can lock and unlock and spray it like just a normal bottle. It's easy to take them on and off as well to see the perfume inside. There's also enough product in each Scentbird vial to last an entire 30 days. Scentbird generously sent me Just Bloom by Valmont, Eros Pour Femme by Versace, Amore by Vince Camuto, and Neroli and Orchidee by L'Occitane. Some spicy news. I'm planning to start dating again soon. I have taken a very, very long hiatus from it. It's actually kind of embarrassing. I have not dated in so long. And let me tell you, I love all the scents that I got, but the Amore by Vince Camuto was by far my favorite, and I'm definitely going to be wearing this one on dates. It's such a romantic vibe. I feel like I'm wandering around Paris when I spray it. You can also skip a month anytime. You can upgrade to multiple scents a month, and you can purchase full-size products from their website, which would make the perfect gift. From now until December 5th, Scentbird is offering a full 60% off using my link, The Horrible, which you'll find in the description box right below this video. After December 5th, feel free to use my code for 55% off. First today is Alexander, who was the Byzantine emperor. Alexander was another Roman emperor, specifically the Byzantine emperor from the year 912 to 913. Very short reign. He allegedly died from exhaustion after playing a game of what we know now as modern polo. This specific game from back then was called Zicanion. Next is beaten to death by a Bible. This person is completely unidentified. We have no idea who this is, but they were literally beaten to death by a Bible in Honolulu, Hawaii in the year 1903. Apparently, this person, we believe it was a man, but he was being treated for malaria. So they brought in this expert to come and help them, but this expert decided that the patient was actually being possessed by demons and that it wasn't malaria after all. He decided that what was going to cure this person was an exorcism instead, and the exorcism included beating him with the Bible, and he beat him so much that he died. This expert was later charged with manslaughter. Bena Tshadi. Bena Tshadi was actually an entire soccer team, or football if you're outside of the US, we call it soccer here. They played in the Dominican Republic of Congo. In October of 1998, they were playing a game when there was suddenly a lightning strike. You know how the odds of being struck by lightning are super, super low, like so low that we don't generally worry about it? Well, all 11 members of the Bena Tshadi soccer team were struck by lightning on this day, and all died from it. They were all between the ages of 20 and 35. The entire other team that they were playing against, the Basanga, were completely unscathed except for a few minor burns. Of course, this caused rumors of witchcraft to come out of it. In some cultures of Africa, some people do hire witch doctors, and you know, that kind of ancient medicine is believed to be a real thing. So this rumor went around that this other team, the Basanga team, hired hired a witch doctor to put a curse on the Bena Tshadi team, and that's why somehow, miraculously, all 11 of them were struck by lightning and died, while the other team was totally fine. That's just how the story goes. I am not saying that that's what the other team did or that they did anything at all. I highly doubt that they did. Even if they did, I don't think it was witchcraft, but I will admit that this one is a pretty crazy bananas coincidence. Death by office chair. Warning, this one is a child victim. A 14-year-old boy had a freak accident. Thankfully, this one is also anonymous though. The story is that in 2009, a 14-year-old boy passed away after his office chair exploded beneath him. He was sitting in an office swivel chair, you know, like, I mean, it's one I'm sitting in now, where it can go up and down with the pump under the seat, when apparently the gas cylinder in the base of the chair exploded, sending shrapnel everywhere and sending metal up the boy's anus, which of course caused pretty significant bleeding, and then he passed away. Now, I was so confused by this, I had to look it up because I was like, gas cylinders? Aren't gas cylinders like those big, super explosive things? And they do actually use a type of gas cylinders for some office chairs. It's actually like compressed air to, you know, make the chair go up and down. Pretty sure they're not like full of gasoline though. And that, along with the fact that I couldn't actually verify this story about the 14-year-old boy. There's just kind of a blurb / rumor that goes around the internet about this one. So I don't want to say that this one is 100% fact because I'm not positive that this happened at all. However, I did verify a story about a 65-year-old man where something very similar to this happened to him, also in China. It was on the news and they have footage of the aftermath. So that one I'm pretty sure is true. So it does make me wonder if that story about the 65-year-old was either confused or kind of got morphed into the one about a 14-year-old boy. I don't think this has happened anywhere else in the world that I could find. It's only happened in China, so there's something about the chairs there that have potentially dangerous items in them, or at least they did. Yeah. Either way, what the hell. Eleazar Avaran. This one, FYI, does involve an elephant, but it was very, very long time ago, like antiquity times, so I think we'll be okay. Eleazar was in battle fighting when he went to kill one of the war elephants from the opposing side, which apparently they used elephants in battle back then. But he took his spear and, you know, attacked the elephant, and it worked. The elephant died. However, when the elephant fell over to die, it fell on Eleazar and killed him too. So he inadvertently caused his own death. Gareth Jones. Gareth was a British actor who died on November 30th, 1958. During a live television show of the anthology series Armchair Theatre in the play Underground on the ITV network in the UK, on November 30th, 1958, Gareth sadly suffered from a massive heart attack and literally passed away between his scenes backstage. By most account, thankfully, it was not on camera. But as they say, the show must go on, and so even in this tragic wake of events, the actors kept the show going and continued and finished the play. They would change some of the lines to say like, oh, if so-and-so was here, I'm sure he would say something like this. So they kind of like made it work. And then in the biggest coincidence of all time, where a lot of strange deaths have something to do with a coincidence, Gareth's character was supposed to die in the play from a heart attack, like for pretend, but he ended up dying from a heart attack for real in the middle of the production. Greg Austin Gingrich. Greg Austin Gingrich was at the Grand Canyon in 1992 with his teenage daughter. As dads do, especially with their teenage daughters, he was messing around and teasing his daughter that day quite a bit. He was pretending to lose his balance and like falling from the canyon. He would like climb up on a guardrail and windmill his arms around all theatrically to make his daughter think he was gonna fall off the cliff and scare her. Ha ha ha, he thought it was really funny. You probably see where this is going. His plan was to climb up on the guardrail and then fall into this little slope that looked very, very shallow to him on the other side, so that it would look like he, you know, disappeared and just fell off, and again, like give his daughter a scare. However, he lost his balance for real, and when he fell, he instead fell 400 feet down to his death. Hans Staininger. Hans was the mayor of Brno in the 1500s. He was well known for his extraordinarily long beard. He had to keep his beard rolled up in his pocket most of the time because it was that long. I'm talking like 2 meters long. However, on this particular day, it was loosey-goosey. It wasn't wrapped up in his pocket. And so he tripped over his own beard and broke his neck. There's actually a photo of his real beard that they kept after he died, and they verified that this was his real beard. Like, here it is. Look at that. Hidr Korkmaz, sorry for the pronunciation there. Hidr was a drug trafficker and informant for the police. He died when he was 42 years old out fishing, when his fishing rod got caught on an electrical wire and electrocuted him. He had been a witness to the criminal case against William Hydr, and in spite of this, his death was ruled an accident and not suspicious at all. William Hydr was a pretty infamous Dutch criminal, so I think it raised a few eyebrows, thinking that perhaps Hydr's death was actually planned so that William could get rid of a witness. Hildegard Whiting. Poor Hildegard. This one hits close to home because it happened just in 2018, so not that long ago, and it also happened in Tacoma, Washington, which Tacoma is like, you know, an hour away from me. So this was July 2018, like I said, in Tacoma, Washington. Hildegard was 77 years old. She had been visiting her son and his wife at their home, and her daughter-in-law was going to take her son's car to drive her home. Now, her son delivers Dippin' Dots for a living. If you don't know what that is, I know that most people in America know what it is, but I don't know if other countries know what it is. So here's a picture of it. It's like a form of ice cream, but it's like weird and, you know, sticks to your mouth more. But, you know, you can get them at the zoo and carnivals and stuff like that. Anyway, in the car, he had left 4 coolers full of dry ice in order to keep his Dippin' Dots frozen for deliveries. Now, dry ice is ice, but not made out of water. It's frozen carbon dioxide. A lot of people use dry ice. I mean, a lot of people use it for the effects because, you know, it like makes all the foamy smoke and stuff, and people use it as a Halloween effect. But people also use it as ice because it evaporates into carbon monoxide gas rather than melting into water. So it's a lot cleaner, less messy. But as most of us know, carbon monoxide is an extremely poisonous gas. And he had these coolers in the back of the car. He didn't know that this was a danger because he thought they were like locked up in the coolers all well. When Hildegard's son, you know, like left his wife and his mother to drive his mother home, expecting his wife to come home pretty quickly, she never comes home. So he goes out looking for her, and to his horror, he finds his car only a few blocks away from their house. He doesn't have a key, so he goes up to the car and finds both his mother and his wife unconscious in the car. He uses a rock to break the window and tries to pull them out. His wife was still alive, thankfully, and taken to the hospital in critical condition, but sadly, his mother was dead. Now, they did find this was a genuine accident on the son's part. He definitely did not mean to do this. He was horrified. He thought that since the dry ice was in coolers, it would stay in there and that the gas wouldn't be released. But they believed that since the car, especially because this was a pretty new car, they thought since it was new, the insulation on the car was iron tight and there was just no ventilation when they went out, and the gas was releasing from the coolers. And Humberto Hernandez. In Oakland, California in June 2007, 24-year-old Humberto was in the wrong place at the very, very wrong time. He was walking along with his wife on the sidewalk. His wife was carrying flowers and cherries that he had just bought them. I assume they went to a local farmer's market or something like that. And they were walking to a restaurant they were going to go eat at. Well, out of nowhere, they were near the site of a crash. An SUV crashed into a fire hydrant nearby. The SUV managed to dislodge the fire hydrant, and it flew through the air and hit Humberto, and of course the impact killed him. This fire hydrant, BT dubs, I don't think people realize just how heavy and big fire hydrants are. This thing was 200 pounds of metal. Jimi Heselden. Jimi Heselden died on September 26, 2010. He was a British entrepreneur. In fact, he became so wealthy that he bought Segway Incorporated. You know, Segways, these things. He was riding a Segway, his own product, when he swerved and flew right off of a cliff. Next is John II Komnos. John II was another emperor, you know, the huge. He was hunting for a wild boar one day, but he accidentally cut himself with his own poisonous arrow that was meant for the boar while he was out hunting. He didn't think the wound was that serious, but of course it became infected, and that was the end of him as well. Johnathan Capewell. This is another teenager that dies, FYI. Johnathan Capewell was a 16-year-old teenager, and he really liked to smell good. He was even, you could say, obsessed with personal hygiene. In October 1998, he would die at his home in Manchester from too many deodorant fumes. Now, mind you, he used spray deodorant, and he would douse his entire body in it, I assume in his room in kind of a small unventilated area, at least twice a day, and he did this for months on end. Now, from the fumes from the spray deodorant, he ended up with a lethal dose of butane and propane. This caused a heart attack, and he passed away from it. I do get that a lot of teenagers become obsessed with personal hygiene. Like, they start to get BO at that age, and they're really, really worried about people smelling it. So, you know, remember Axe, and we all had those teenage boys that would spray Axe on the school bus on their way to high school, and it made you want to gag. But I would bet my money on the fact that something else was obviously going on here as well. I don't want to diagnose, because I have no right to diagnose anybody, but this sounds like a symptom of OCD or some type of symptom of another anxiety disorder or something like that. Like, I'm just saying, if he was so obsessed, he was covering his entire body in it at least twice a day, every single day, I would worry that maybe he had something else going on. So it's just really sad that in a million years, you wouldn't think that that would cost you your life. Killed by a beaver. In April of 2013, a 60-year-old man who, again, has never been identified, was in Belarus when he saw a beaver out in the wild while he was on a fishing trip with his friends. He got close to the beaver because he wanted to take a picture. So obviously too close to the beaver, because the beaver felt threatened and bit the man right on the thigh. The beaver managed to sever an artery, and in spite of their best efforts, his friends couldn't save him in time. Remember, people, beavers can bite through actual wood with their teeth. They can also carry rabies, so let's just stay as far away from beavers as possible. They're like very much like wood raccoons. Ely Murillo-Moncada. In spite of this one being pretty deep down on the iceberg, I'm sure many of you have heard of this. I've also talked about this one briefly within other videos. On November 28, 2009, 25-year-old Larry ran out of his parents' house in the middle of a snowstorm. He was barefoot, no shoes or socks, but he also didn't have his keys, a car, or any personal items on him, just the clothes on his back, which was just a sweater, even though it was a snowstorm. And that was it. He vanished without a trace. His family did everything they could to try to find Larry. They put up posters, they called, of course, filed missing person reports, they searched and they searched and they searched, and they couldn't find him. That is until almost 10 years later. Larry's body would eventually be found between the walls and the refrigerators in the grocery store that he worked at, less than a mile away from his home where he left from. His mother would say that Larry was acting very, very strange before he left home that day. He was acting very disoriented and not himself. She did take him to a doctor, and the doctor prescribed an antidepressant. However, it didn't seem like the antidepressant was helping Larry, or, it hadn't had enough time to take effect. And as we know, there can also be some crazy side effects with the antidepressants sometimes. She said that very soon before he disappeared, her son was suffering from hallucinations and even hearing voices, auditory delusions. He would talk about somebody following him. Anyway, the only reason he ever found his body in 2019 was because they were going to close the store down, so they hired hired contractors to come in and like rip everything out of the store and gut it, basically. Workers found his body in the 18-inch gap between the coolers and the wall when they were tearing the store down. Now, this wasn't so strange that he would climb up there in the first place. It was well known that the employees at that store would use this kind of like area above the coolers as kind of a hiding spot. It was used for storage and stuff. I believe there was some sort of like thing in the ceiling to get up, or some sort of crawl space or something, I would imagine, because it was said that employees would kind of take unofficial breaks up there as well. And so it's thought that Larry like went up there to hide, thinking, you know, if he was paranoid and having hallucinations. And so he ran away from home and ran to the store because he worked there, so he, you know, knew the layout of the store. He went up there, but he slipped and fell between the gap in the wall and the fridge. The coolers are running all the time, so they would have been extremely loud. There was also probably music going on in the store all the time, so nobody would have heard Larry's cries for help. And he wasn't supposed to be working that day. Like, he ran away from home and went to where his job was when he didn't have a shift. So it's not like his coworkers would have been looking for him or had known that he was missing at work or anything like that. All around, just very bizarre and very tragic. However, you gotta be grateful that the parents, even though they can't bring their son back, at least got closure, because that's one of those things that if your son just disappeared without a trace and you never found out, like anything could have happened to him, is just unimaginable. Michael Godwin. This one is just so bizarre. 21-year-old Michael Anderson Sloan, who also went by Michael Anderson Godwin, was from South Carolina, and he was convicted of the 1980 SA and murder of 24-year-old Mary Elizabeth Royam. He was convicted of the crime in 1981 and was subsequently sentenced to die by electric chair. However, in 1983, as frequently happens, his sentence was then changed to life in prison, so he managed to escape the death penalty. But even though he escaped the electric chair, Michael would still die by electrocution in 1989, except in his cell, and it was an accident. He was trying to fix a pair of headphones that were attached to his TV in his cell, and while doing so, he was sitting on the metal toilet in the cell. He bit down on the headphones while he was trying to fix them, and this straight up electrocuted him, and he died this way. Mildred Bowman and Alice Wardle. Two British sisters, Mildred Bowman, who was 62 years old, and Alice Wardle, who was 68 years old, were vacationing together in Spain at a holiday resort back in 2005. They were sleeping on one of those fold-away beds, and they were both sleeping. They were like in separate beds, but the beds were attached. I'll show you a picture of it in a minute. And the frame that they fold the beds down from fell on top of the women. They were not killed instantly. From the descriptions I read, it sounds like they weren't even really crushed, but they were just trapped. Like, the frame was so freaking heavy that they could not lift it off of themselves, and both of them ended up actually suffocating to death. So here's a picture of the beds. I'm pretty sure these are the actual ones that they were staying at, or if not, it was very similar to ones like this. As you can see, they were like separate beds, so they were sleeping separately, but the two beds were attached by this frame. So first of all, the two women didn't pull the beds down correctly, so they were like slightly tilted when they were supposed to be completely horizontal. But to their credit, there was no instructions in the room for how to assemble the beds or anything. There was no instructions given to them beforehand and nothing in the room. So they were just kind of doing their best, and they assumed that it wasn't going to be that dangerous, because if it was dangerous, then why wouldn't they have given them instructions? So the women were very innocent in all this. They also, though, found out that the bed frames to begin with were not mounted to the walls properly anyway. So even if they had pulled them down correctly, this still could have happened. Anyway, the women were not found for 4 days, which is absolutely horrifying because we don't know exactly how long they were stuck before they actually passed. Natalie Nemets. Natalie was 36 years old in October 2017 when she would pass away in a freak accident in Russia. She was a worker at a candy factory and was cleaning out one of those giant tanks, you know, used to stir candy. She either stumbled or she fainted from the high temperatures and fell into the giant mixer. After she fell, boiling hot caramel made its way into the mixer with her, boiling her alive. This one is straight out of a horror movie. I can't think of a worse way to go than this. However, I do take solace in the fact that she probably didn't realize what was going on. I'm guessing this one was pretty quick, or at least put her into shock so quickly that she didn't feel pain or anything. At least, yeah, that's what I'm gonna tell myself regardless, but it does seem like at least it was a quick way. Phillip McClean. In April 1926, 16-year-old Phillip McClean and his 13-year-old brother came across a cassowary. Here's a picture of this flightless bird for you. As I won't lie, I had no idea what this was, so I assume some of you don't know either. Anyway, the two boys, the story goes, decided that they wanted to kill the bird. As they went to attack it, the bird kicked the younger brother, who just ran away. But then Philip approached it and hit the bird with a club. But Philip tripped and fell, and so the bird walked up to him and kicked him. The bird kicked Philip in the neck, which cut it open, and Philip tried to get back to his house. He made it a few yards, but he collapsed from blood loss and then died. Now, this is again kind of the way the story is told on the internet, but I have a feeling that this story could have changed a lot. Somebody had found the original newspaper article for this story that actually said Philip was 17 and his brother was 14. And it actually said they didn't just decide they were going to kill this bird for no reason. The bird was attacking their dog. So they were trying to save the dog. And that's when all of this went down and the cassowary killed Philip. Who knows? The internet is sometimes one big game of telephone. Robert Dreyer. Robert Dreyer turned 89 years old on the very day that he would crash his car into a fire hydrant in Florida in May 2017. He was unharmed from the crash, but he did get out of the car to see the damage to his car. The water pressure from striking the fire hydrant, the water underneath the ground sucked him under and he drowned like right under where he crashed his car. I had no idea that that was even possible, but I guess I had never thought much about where the water to the fire hydrants like sits. So I guess it does make sense. Robert Williams. Robert Williams was the first known case of a human being killed by a robot. On January 25th, 1979, Robert Williams was a 25-year-old factory worker at Ford Motors assembly line in Flat Rock, Michigan. He was sent up to a storage facility to retrieve parts as the robots were allegedly not working or they weren't going fast enough, something like that. But there was also a robot up there retrieving parts nearby, and one of its arms struck Robert right in the head and killed him instantly. His family was given $10 million in damages. Sir William Payne-Gallwey. He was an English conservative politician from the mid-1800s. While out shooting one day in Bagby, a village located in North Yorkshire, William tripped over a turnip. He suffered terrible internal injuries from this fall and died. Excuse my pronunciation for this one, it's Japanese. Takuya Nagaya. Takuya was a 23-year-old Japanese man who was killed by his own father in January 2013. He was at his parents' house on this night when he had allegedly become very erratic and they claimed even violent. His parents would later claim that their son started saying he was a snake and then slithering around on the ground trying to act like a snake. Some people tell this story as if the son was just fooling around and joking with his parents for whatever reason, but it makes the story sound very silly, so I have a feeling that again, game of telephone. It seems more like the son was having some sort of psychotic breakdown and needed help. But regardless, if your son was acting like this and then got down on the ground claiming he was a snake and started slithering around, what would you do? You would take him to the hospital, right? Or you would take him to get help ASAP. You would assume that he was either having a mental breakdown, which he needed immediate help for, or he was on drugs or something like that. And either way was unsafe, right? That's not what they did. His father was sure that this just meant he had simply been possessed by a snake. And so he just started to beat his son over and over to try to get the snake out of him. He was also allegedly biting and headbutting his son. The attack apparently spanned for like almost 24 hours. It started on Thursday late at night and didn't end until Friday evening. Finally, the man went limp, and so then he was finally taken to the hospital, but of course it was too late. Now, the last detail about this case is that they were going to check the father then for any sort of mental break or psychological issues, obviously, for like such a weird response to his son acting like a snake. But I could not find any updates on this case, nothing more recent about whatever happened to the dad or, you know, what they decided his reasoning was behind it or anything. So I couldn't tell you. Tony Eyles. Oof. Okay, this one is very, very fresh, like from September 2021, just a little over a year ago. So let's be extra, extra respectful in the comments regarding this one, because I mean, 2 little kids lose their daddy in this story, and it was very recent. So just FYI, let's be extra, extra sensitive. So Tony was a 42-year-old father and husband from Vancouver, BC. He was killed by his own car at a McDonald's drive-thru. So what happened was he was handing his credit card to the worker at the drive-thru through the window, but he dropped his card out the window and the card fell on the ground. So as anyone would, Tony opens his door and he, you know, grabs for the card on the ground. But he didn't like realize that the car was still in gear, and so the car starts rolling. The door is like open. You can't, this probably doesn't help at all, but here's the wall and here's like the door that opens on it, and then it like pushes the door closed like this, and Tony is right here, so he gets crushed between the frame of the car and the door because the door moves forward in this drive-through while he had it open. This honestly is so scary to me. It could literally, I mean, this could happen to anyone. This was just one of those things, like you're on autopilot, you're just trying to like, especially in a drive-through, you're trying to like move it along. You don't want to hold up the workers or the people behind you. So if you dropped your card, you'd be like, you know, have a moment of like, oh no, and try to go get it really quick. So I can totally see this happening. And oh my gosh, this poor family. Oh my gosh. Tycho Brahe. Tycho was a Danish astronomer from the 1500s to the early 1600s. His astronomical observations were the most accurate for his time, which for the science back then is pretty impressive. He died in 1601 at the age of 54 because he had developed a bladder or kidney ailment of some kind. He had attended a banquet in Prague recently. He needed to pee in the middle of the banquet, but he absolutely refused to leave because it was like against the etiquette to leave in the middle of a banquet. But he held it in for so long, we all know that's not good, and by the time he got home, he could barely urinate at all. If he did, it was like in very small amounts, and he never could urinate again after that without just terrible, terrible pain. He died 11 days later from this. Not everybody knows this, but this is a great time for a PSA. If you can't pee for whatever reason, like you feel like you gotta pee and you try to pee and nothing comes out, like something's wrong. Not everybody knows that. I didn't know that until I worked in healthcare, and it's also happened to me when I was in the hospital, and it is the scariest thing ever. Like, it is not good to keep something inside your body that your body doesn't want. Let me tell you, it's just never a good sign. If this ever happens to you, go be seen ASAP. Hugo Avalos-Channon. Hugo was a 41-year-old man in Oregon who died on April 29, 2013. He was a cleaning contractor at a meat factory. He was cleaning one of those industrial meat blenders like just before midnight with his team. Again, I'm sure you can see where this terrible, terrible, terrible story is going, but he was using a hose to clean out one of the meat blenders, and the hose got caught in the paddles inside the meat blender and of course pulls him very quickly inside, and the blender was turned on. Killed him very quickly. His coworkers realized pretty quickly what happened, and they did go and they turned the emergency switch and turned off the blender as fast as they possibly could, but it was just too late. Like, there was no surviving that. Why the blender was on at all while they were cleaning is very unclear. It's thought that maybe they just accidentally switched it on while they were working, but no, it wasn't supposed to be on at all while they were cleaning. The last one for tier 7 is Laurence Baker. I seriously thought that someone was added to the list in error when I read this one. Laurence Baker died almost the exact same way as Michael Godwin did. And we just talked about Michael Godwin in this tier in this video. Laurence Baker was also a convicted murderer serving a life in prison sentence after escaping the death penalty. He was 47 years old in 1997 when he too got electrocuted and died from the aluminum toilet in his cell. He was also wearing headphones that were attached to his television, except he wasn't trying to fix his headphones. He was using illegal or not allowed headphones because they were homemade. They weren't provided by the prison, and therefore they technically weren't allowed. But with that, them being homemade, they were probably made very improperly, and so there was wire crossing or something with the wires in the headphones, and it again electrocuted him because he was sitting on a metal toilet while using them. So not only were Laurence Baker and Michael Godwin these two very strange deaths in and of themselves, but the fact that two of them passed away in this very, very strange, unique manner in almost the exact same way as each other is just like, what? Real Final Destination type shit there. All right, friends, that is going to be it for tier 7. Thank you guys so much for your patience as I've been gone the last couple weeks. And please like the video just to help the channel out, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much to all our patrons. Special shout out to top tiers Colin Holmes, Deck of Cards, Michelle Valdovinos, Tom L, JJ, Quasi Eli, Little Kittle Cat, Mitchell Schaefer Meyer, Mike, Alice Paul, Dark-Sided Otter, Brittany Phillips, Willow Winchester, Bambi, Momo Neon, Philip J, Marita 144, Sage K, Literally Lacey, Elderly Hipster, Christina Amos, Veronica C, Reese Rolls, Leon James, The Puppy Hack, Rebecca Jackson, Headless Fancy, Toby, Carter, and Kawakan Anime and Gaming Convention.